Good evening, my little angels. Are you ready for bed? Are you ready for a bedtime story? Now, this story is about a little princess, and this princess turned into a little star, and she fluttered all the way up to the sky and was there in the night time, twinkling away every time the sky was dark, and every time that there was no clouds in the sky, and the king would look up and feel very sad that his little girl, the princess, was there twinkling away as a star, and he couldn't do anything about it. Do you want to know how she turned into a star? Well, that's the story I'm going to tell now. Once upon a time, there was a little princess called Rita. Her name was Rita, Princess Rita. Now, when you hear the word princess, do you think about a nice girl with curly long hair and nice blue or pink dresses, dancing around in the garden, playing with the people and the moms and the kings and the queens and all that kind of thing, like a very nice smiley little princess? Well, Princess Rita was terrible. She was the worst little terrible girl in the whole wide world. If you think the princess in those books, where she wants a birthday every day and she doesn't want to do this or do that, well, Princess Rita was a little monster. You always hear stories about the mom, like the stepmom, the bad one that came in when the real mommy died, or the terrible sisters of the little princess. But you never hear a story about a terrible princess that made the mom's life a misery. That's right, because of this little Rita princess. Mommy and Daddy were having such a hard time, and all the workers in the castle, the cleaners and the cooks and the doctors and the chefs and the admiral and all the helpers had a very, 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 very difficult time because Princess Rita was like a little monster. She didn't listen to anybody. She did what she wanted to do. She would wake up when she wanted, even though the maids and the mom and the dad shouted at her to get up for her breakfast. Sometimes she would get up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When her little brother was coming back from school, she would wake up and get out of bed. And as he was having a snack from after school, she would stamp and hit the table and go, "Where's my breakfast?" The chef, who was making a snack for her little brother, was always surprised, so he had to have all the kinds of food ready to be made at any time of day. So the chef was very stressed because he didn't know whether he was making breakfast at 6 p.m. or making dinner at 9 a.m. or having lunch at 3 o'clock in the morning when there was nobody awake. Just because Princess Rita thumped the table and went, "I want my food now. I'm the princess. Give it to me now." And of course, because she was the daughter of the queen and the king, everybody had to do what she said. Because if the chef said, "Rita, it's like 9 o'clock at night. You can't have your breakfast now," well, that chef would be kicked out of the castle right away and be left with no job and nobody to cook for, especially a king and a queen and a castle. He was very lucky to have a job like this. And so that is just the tip of the iceberg. And that means that's just the beginning of the whole story about Rita, the terrible princess. She would demand her food whenever she wanted. She would wake up whenever she wanted. And she would do whatever she wanted. Her little brother was a very, very nice prince. And of course, even though Rita was older and was probably going to be the queen, everybody wanted the little brother to be the king instead of Rita. They were really, really, really sad when they thought that Princess Rita could be the Queen Rita, because they knew that the country and the land would just be so terrible place. But her brother Roger was such a nice boy. He always went to school every day. He always wore his clothes, and he always got up on time. He always ate his breakfast at breakfast time, and his lunch at lunch time, and his dinner at dinner time. And he went to bed early, and he brushed his teeth and washed his face and did his homework and all the things that a nice little boy would do. But Princess Rita didn't even do any of those things. She was often awake when everybody was asleep, and she was often asleep when everybody was awake. She never brushed her teeth, so her teeth had all gone black and rotten, and sometimes she would scream and cry and hit the chef because her teeth hurt. And he would say, "Why don't you go to the dentist to get your teeth sorted out?" "I don't want to go to the dentist." But then, one day, she hurt her teeth so much, she went to the dentist at 10 o'clock at night. And anybody who's anybody knows that dentists don't work at 10 o'clock at night. But this dentist had to wake up at 10 o'clock because Rita, the princess, was banging on his door, screaming and crying, going, "Open the door and fix my teeth. I'm the princess and my teeth hurt." Well, the dentist, who had been working all day and had just fallen asleep, got up in his pajamas and turned all the lights on in the dentist. Sat her down on the seat and put her back, and she opened her mouth, and oh my gosh. The dentist said, "Oh, we've got lots of work to do in here." "No, just this one." And she pointed to the tooth that hurt. So the dentist had to take it out. And then Rita, the princess, walked home. "Oh, you're going to have to come back for all the other teeth to be fixed." "No, I'll come back when I want." Okay. And what about paying for this one?" "I'm the princess," said Princess Rita. And that's what she did. She would go into a shop and she would take some bread if she wanted it. She would go into the cafe and drink all the tea if she wanted it. She would go to the toy shop and take all the toys if she wanted, and never pay a penny. And so all the people around the town, all the shopkeepers and bakers and candlestick makers and dentists and doctors and everybody else and the toy shop owners, they all hated Princess Rita because she just took everything and didn't pay. But being on the land of the king and the queen, they couldn't say anything, because if they did, if they complained, the king might just kick them out, say, "Get out of my country," or "Stop selling those breads if you're not going to give any to my family." So they all had to keep quiet, and they all hated Princess Rita. Now one day, Princess Rita was being her terrible, terrible self and treating everybody so miserably that for some reason, maybe because of all the people in the country were thinking the same thing at the same time, poof! A little magic fairy godmother popped up on Rita's shoulder, and she tapped Rita on the ear. Rita turned round and almost fell over. "Oh, what's this? Who are you?" "I am your fairy godmother, Rita. Now usually I help little girls like you who are being tortured and have a terrible mummy or terrible sisters and need my help. But now I am doing it the other way because you are being so terrible and everybody else needs my help. But I don't have time to go and sit on everybody's shoulder, so I'm just going to sit on your shoulder and tell you the truth. You are one nasty little girl, and you have to stop being nasty to all the people, and stop taking the bread when you're hungry, stop taking the toys when you want, pay for your food and your dentists, get up at your proper time, eat your breakfast at breakfast time, eat your lunch at lunch time, have your dinner at dinner time, go to bed. Before you go to bed, brush your teeth, wash your face. And then people might start to like you. And then, when you're older, just maybe, if you become the queen, people might listen to you. But if you don't and you keep going, by the time you're the queen, all the people in the land will get together and kick you out of the castle, and you'll never be queen or princess or anything again. You might even be killed." Don't be silly. And Princess Rita flicked the little fairy off her shoulder and kicked her across the room. Well, fairies being fairies are quite magical, and she was able to bounce off the wall and still stay spinning and floating around. But this little fairy was also a bit of a bad fairy, because her mum was a witch and her dad was a nice fairy. And so she had a bit of black magic inside her, and she put a curse on Rita and said, "Rita, I'm telling you now, if you don't behave and if you don't be good, by your next birthday, you're going to turn into a little star, and you're going to float up into the sky, and you're going to be twinkling. And every time your dad looks at you, he's going to feel sad, because you turned into a star. And you're going to be able to just look down on this little country and watch as your brother becomes the king, and everybody's going to love him, and everybody's going to forget about you because they hated you so much." "Oh, get lost." And Rita picked up a cup and threw it at the fairy. Of course, the fairy disappeared because she's magic, and the cup smashed against the wall, and all the pieces fell into the dog's bed. Rita, being very Rita, she didn't even clean the dog's bed, and when the dog ran and jumped in, it got cuts everywhere and had to go to the hospital. So even the animals in the castle didn't like Rita. And then she went to sleep that night. She got up at 11:55 the next morning, and she'd even not brushed her teeth. And so she got up and she went to the breakfast place and said, "I want my breakfast." And the chef said, "Well, it's 12 o'clock now. Why don't you have your lunch? Because I've just made lunch for everybody else in the castle." "No, I want my breakfast. I'll have my lunch at 4 o'clock, not now." "And there we go," said the chef, and he made her some breakfast. And this continued all the way up until her birthday. And the night before her birthday, the little fairy came back and said, "Rita, what did I tell you a while ago? You've got a few more hours to change your mind and to be nice, because when you wake up tomorrow, it's your birthday, and if you have not changed by then, you're going to disappear into the sky." Well, this time, Rita picked up her shoe and threw it at the fairy, and it almost hit her, but the fairy dodged out the way. And so the fairy said, "I told you, I'll come back tomorrow to see you go to the sky as a little stinky, twinky little star." And that's what she did. The next day, the fairy whistled down and tapped the king on his shoulder and said, "Come with me, because if you don't come now, you'll never see your daughter again." And so he got the queen, and they went down to the princess's bedroom, where she was fast asleep at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. "You better say happy birthday and see what happens." And so the mummy and the daddy had a big surprise, and they said, "Happy birthday, Rita." Rita rubbed her eyes, sat up in bed, and went, "Get lost! I'm trying to sleep. What are you doing in my room?" And just then, as she said that, she started to twinkle and sparkle and disappear, and all her body crushed up into a little diamond-like star and twinkled away and shot up into the sky. Her daddy and the mummy stayed there, and they could not believe what just happened. And they stayed there with the little fairy for 5 hours, looking into the sky where this twinkly, twinkly, twinkly was. And it got dark. And then they could see the star. It was the biggest star in the sky. And when it twinkled, they could see, even though it wasn't looking like Rita, but they could tell from the twinkle, the twinkle in her eyes, that it was Rita, the princess, had turned into a star and was stuck up there forever and ever. And every night her daddy would look out the window and sigh with sadness and go, "Oh, Rita, if only you'd listened to your magic fairy godmother, everything would have been alright, but you were just so stubborn that you had to do it your way and you didn't think about anybody else, and now you're a star stuck up in the sky. And your brother is going to be 18 tomorrow and he's going to be the king. Well, that's exactly what happened. Her little brother, Prince Roger, became King Roger, and Roger's mummy and daddy retired, and they went to move into a house by the beach, and Roger became the best loved king in the whole wide world, all underneath his terrible sister Rita, who was twinkling in the sky. The end.